Join me for an exciting webinar with Supply Chain Brain featuring trade experts from Thomson Reuters, Ernst & Young, and Georgia Pacific. We'll explore key insights from Thomson Reuters' 2023 State of Global Trade Report, provide valuable tips on leveraging global trade technology to support your talent, and discuss the expanding responsibilities of ESG reporting in the supply chain.
Feeling good.
Feeling good about that.
Feeling good about it. And heading into Christmas too. Welcome to Freightonmoics.
What more can you ask for?
Thanks for joining us today here on the show, or if you're listening, thanks for listening. Zach Strickland, head of Freight Market Intelligence. Anthony Smith, chief economist here, and we're heading into Christmas. Anthony, this is a weird time of year. I was talking to several people, customers in the space. And they all kind of, it's funny now that I get to kind of broaden my horizons and get out of my cubicle bubble that I was in for years. And I get to hear all the other perspectives. And it's funny how aligned we all are in our ability to kind of understand what's happening around us. It's all kind of the same thing. Like it happens to be this like weird mix of laziness and urgency. Like, they know that we got to get to the holiday and get the stuff out and get something out before they're leaving. But they don't want to put all the effort into it.
Yeah, and it's almost like calling people's bluff and people kind of being in motion on a few things. Like, something's coming up. Let me pass this one forward to the next stage.
Yeah.
And if they don't do anything with this project, I'm okay with that. But then they do something with it. And it's just kind of like this lazy game of tennis happening right now.
Let me just get the bare minimum out the door so I can get out the door with it. But I think all the transportation service providers want for Christmas is a flipped market, right?
I would say that's accurate. And it's interesting. So as you mentioned, kind of getting into this market, and there's just been so much activity. I don't know if you saw the essentially chief economist for the United States, Jay Powell, with his this interview that he did as he addressed the nation after the decision.
I saw a summary of it. Sorry.
I mean,
I didn't watch it.
He had all the bingo, I think, cues of a dual mandate and data first and all those other talking points, and definitely want to combat the inflation ongoing problem while keeping price stability there, but also addressing the oversupply in the employment sector. But it's just all these talking points. But the market reacted in a very bullish way. And last week we were talking about this mindset kind of going into it and how it can be dangerous because we have folks that are already calling for a soft landing. Mm-hmm. And we just had an upward revision in the GDP for third quarter up to over 5% now.
Big number.
It's a big number. And as an economist, I've seen different trends. I can't count how many forecasts, all of them great. And one of the big things that as a forecaster is you don't call for the trough right after you hit the peak. I mean, you can do like a 3-year outlook, but calling for, all right, this is the trough, but you're at a peak is very interesting strategies. And it's a dangerous mindset for individuals and also for a lot of companies because we're starting to see that there's still layoffs happening.
Yeah, and didn't he signal for 3 rate cuts?
That was the results from some of the voting.
Seems insane to me. Mm-hmm. Am I off base here? Because aren't interest rates supposed to be a slow, maneuver?
It has to be slow, and also we don't know if he also said that they're keeping hikes on the table just in case because we never know what might happen in this crazy economy. But if there are those 3 cuts coming up in the next year, it's going to be interesting to see, okay, when these happen. Is it going to be as soon as the first quarter? And if so, will it be a quarter basis points? Will it be a half basis point? Because what will be that tapering off? And will that tapering off undo some of the work that is done on getting inflation down? Because that's the scary point, because it's easier to create inflation than it is to get it under control. It's hard to put that inflation genie back in the bottle, as they say. So as we look at that, that's going to be one of the big questions is, do the consumers get too hot going into this period? And does the employment market hold up? Because that's the big thing holding everything together is going to be the labor market.
Well, you know who has some opinions on this, and also what we need to thank, who we need to thank for being a sponsor, continued sponsor, the right. Thomson Reuters. In the 2023 Corporate Global Trade Survey report from Thomson Reuters is here, and you don't want to miss this. Navigate the ever-changing trade environment with insights into hot topics like skills gap, ESG reporting, ongoing and upcoming industry developments, and more by getting your free copy today. Download now at the link on your screen. I did download it. I did download it because it does have, like, it actually has some really good, I say that like I'm shocked, but I'm not. Like, it's got some pretty decent stuff in there in terms of overall trends for what to expect. And I mean, why would you not expect that from this, from Thomson Reuters? So, I mean, there are some interesting things. I think I've become a little less bearish about 2024, not because of, and again, all forecasts are opinion, but yes, the economy is going to slow. I think naturally it has to. I think it is in the process of slowing. I don't know what to make of 5.2% GDP. But I feel like COVID and the pandemic has created so much economic opportunity to create value. There's so much inefficiency now present in the world. And that itself, the process of solving that inefficiency creates opportunity for economic value production. And I think that's going to help us kind of not fall into a complete pit of despair, if you will. That's just my opinion. Well, but we also have Dr. Rogers. Yeah. We got to get our market in two in. So if you wanna,
I got to count you in.
You got to count me in, and let's get Dr. Rogers up here, and we'll get on with it.
2, 1, go.
All right. First chart of the day, OTVI, demand. It is up above 2022 and 2019 in the green and orange lines. We are up above 2018, if I put it on here, but I didn't. The COVID pandemic demand cycle, we're still well below that from a total tender perspective. If we go to the next chart, CLAV, this puts this into a little bit more perspective. CLAV is the accepted tenders only. OTVI includes rejected tenders. If you look at this from a pure accepted perspective, we're only 8%, 6 to 8% below where we were last year. Or I'm sorry, in 2021. We are well above where we were last year in terms of accepted volumes, and we're approximately 10 to 12% below peak accepted volumes that we had in 2021. We are not far away from that, and nobody can tell because we pull up, one particular piece of this I want to pull up, LOTVI on the next chart here. Look at what's driving it. Long haul tender volumes. That's that white line. And then we have a little bit of a spike of short haul tender volumes, or local volumes, if you will, COTVI, spiking up there, which we normally see right before Christmas, because that's that fulfillment freight going, that downstream provider that hopefully Dr. Rogers gets to talk to us about here in just a second. But long haul freight has been the story of the back half of 2023, and it continues into an unseasonable period. Let's go to the next chart here. Outbound tender rejection index. This is why nobody can tell. This is where the Newman meme comes in. See, nobody cares that demand is high. Tender rejection rates continue to be well below an area that anybody's going to be able to tell there's a ton of instability, because all that volume is staying under contracted capacity agreements. It's not falling into the spot market. Carriers are happy and willing and capable to take almost all that freight, and it doesn't look like it's making a strong move just yet. But I will say this, December 15th, which is tomorrow if you're watching live, is typically the day that rejection rates begin their seasonal trek higher.
Got you. And so, Zach, when we're looking at, because there's things that we can kind of infer from different lengths of haul, whether it'll be short haul, we're seeing different things happening on the distribution, warehousing side. What is something that we can kind of infer from long haul?
Yeah, long haul tends to be that replenishment freight. And I think I showed it last week where it's coming from the ports, the port cities. We've got Los Angeles, Long Beach, obviously the strongest one in the United States. Ontario volumes growing, but also Dallas. Dallas is also seeing a bit of a growth rate. Atlanta, not so much. So very West Coast centric. That is a nuance that is going to be interesting to monitor moving forward, because normally Los Angeles freight dies in the winter.
You know who's still alive?
Who's still alive?
Colorado State. They're still kicking.
Yes.
Even though they're not going bowling, they are still an accredited
Almost beat
institution.
Colorado.
They almost beat Colorado.
Almost beat Coach
And
Brown.
we have one of their very best here to join us today.
Let's bring him on.
We have Dr. Zac Rogers.
There he is. There's the man
Let's
with
go.
the plan.
25 basketball. So
Let's go.
He's already moved on.
Can't pick and choose.
He's already moved on.
But look, we're not one of your fancy schools that's going to be good at all the sports. Okay, we can do one. That's
Well,
fine.
you're in Colorado too, so you can go skiing and not have to worry about it either. You've got other things to do, which is probably better. Well,
That's
thank
right.
you for.
No, I can tell I have other things to do. Is I'm going with my FreightWaves zip up on the bottom and my what the truck on the top, because I found out I was doing this show about 20 minutes ago. But I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today. So let's get right into it, man. I was going to talk about an article that actually quoted one of your colleagues, Susan Galicic. Apologize if I totally
Galicic.
murdered that name.
Chair of Colorado State Supply Chain Group.
So, Rachel Premack, of course, said that we're still at risk for another everything shortage because supply chains have basically gone all the way back to where they were outside of one little tidbit, which is the lead time situation, which has expanded and stayed up since 2019, a strange little nuance that's reflected in our tender data. But the thing I want to kind of ask you about here on top of the LMI readings for November is, do you think that there is some validity to this statement? Do you think that shipping behavior has, even though we've talked about de-risking as a big component of 2023, do you think that we've actually kind of reverted back into this space where we are still at pretty strong risk for supply shortages for good?
Well, we've moved back to JIT for sure.
Yeah.
And if you look at retail, the retail, the things that brought the LMI down this month was decreases in inventory. And, inventory is supposed to go down in November and December. That's the way that it should work. And so that's what we're seeing. I don't think that it's the same risk with like it being a replay of 2020 or 21. And the reason why is, yes, inventories are down. They declined this month. In the November report, they're at 44. Now for downstream, for retailers and stuff, they're basically a 49, 48.8, which a 48.8 is exactly what JIT looks like. So that's good. But the thing that's not the same is transportation. So the problem in 2020 and 21 was we were short on goods and we had no transportation capacity. Right now, we have transportation capacity. And prices are low. And so I don't think that we are in a risk of suddenly it's March of 2020 and you go to the grocery store and all they have is like the weird kind of soup because everyone already bought the good ones. Like we're not going to move towards that again unless something drastic happens. So yes, it might be a bit of a shock to some people because we went from having the most inventory we've ever had to now we're back to a sort of a just-in-time model, but we're not in the sort of scarcity bracket that we were in early 2020 or 2021. It doesn't seem like that to me.
And one of the interesting things that I saw here, because we talk about, of course, available capacity on the road, we look at outbound tender rejection index. Zac just talked about it in the marketing too. And all the times when I'm on calls or if I'm in Sonar, a lot of times I'll put up OTRI versus some LMI indices. And one of them, of course, is going to be transportation capacity and some of the relationships or inverse relationships that kind of appear there. And what we saw was an increase of 5.2 and transportation capacity. And that just kind of seemed like a drastic jump there.
So transportation capacity moved from 56.7 in October to 61 in November. Now, again, most of that is driven upstream. If you look downstream, our capacity number was 59, and then upstream was 65 and a half. And so a lot of the growth is driven upstream. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense because things have mostly gotten through the ports at this point. Things have moved downstream towards retailers and their distribution or fulfillment centers. And so I think it makes sense, seasonally speaking, that we've seen this move for specific parts of the economy. Now, that being said, there's certainly things like, Zach, when you were talking about long haul and what that's doing, that's different. But the other thing to remember, even though capacity is up, is we've seen positive movements in utilization for the last 3 months, and then this month we're at 50. And now 50 doesn't mean that we're using less trucks. It actually means that we're using the same amount of available capacity as we were last month. And so I think for the most part, transportation is kind of doing what it should be doing at this part of the year, but things are certainly lighter. We don't have the inventory buildup that we did in 22 or 21. And so while we are utilizing capacity, I think at a healthy rate, we still have a lot of unused capacity because we overbuilt during the last few years. So, in terms of spot rates versus contract rates, I mean, I think it's partly that, who wants to sign if you're a carrier right now, you may be leaning into spot rates because probably, contracts are going to get a lot better for you in the next 6 months. And so I don't know that it's necessarily, Anthony, you said you like to do OTVI versus the LMI. I don't like when our boys fight. I think of them as complementary, and really they're supporting each other. And I think if you dig into the nuance, some of the differences we see probably make a little bit of sense.
Oh no, our boys don't fight. I wrote an article about it. I think I even correlated it with the capacity and utilization numbers to our OTRI, and it almost explained it perfectly. So something I want to kind of hit on, because we have this demand side situation in our OTVI figure, and you just said it looks like capacity is still widely available. Well, there are two different things in my mind in general. So I kind of want to break down what to make of this demand side growth. Do you think, I think one of the main storylines of the year, and I think we were all expecting this inventory correction that we've seen manifest. How much of this demand side growth is a product of that demand side, that inventory just in time, reversion? And how much of it is kind of a natural growth in the economy, do you think?
I think it's both. We have certainly a natural growth in the economy. Rates of inflation have slowed down pretty considerably. And the other thing that's interesting is if you look at where inflation has really slowed down, it's in the stuff you're going to buy for the holidays, like toys, electronics, apparel. All the inflation that was baked into those products has subsided essentially, and you're still seeing it maybe for things like grocery, but for like consumer type, Christmassy holiday goods, a lot of that's gone. And I think people have a little more spending power than they did before. And part of that is because inventories are leaner, actually. The driver, I know we've talked about this in other episodes, the driver of inflation in 2022 was supply side inflation. And our total aggregate supply costs are down very considerably, like 100 points lower than they were in the summer of 2022, which tells you that the cost that was associated with holding all this stuff has kind of subsided. And so I think some of it is a natural growth that comes from people having a little more purchasing power. And then also, it's still going to be Christmas on December 25th. People are still going to go out and buy things. Now, they are buying more things with buy now, pay later than we've seen in the past. So that's maybe something to monitor. But for the most part, I think this is sort of a natural movement of growth. And then there has been some decline, there there has been some disappearing, I think, of capacity in transportation, even though we still probably have too much. I think we have less idle capacity than we had in the summer, partly from closures and then, acquisitions or whatever else it is. And so basically what's happening is, if you think about where we were a year ago, we had supply way up here and demand way down here. Supply has come down a little bit. Demand has moved up. We're not at equilibrium yet, but we're getting closer to the place where these things can be happy. Now, obviously, if you're in the freight market, you would actually like maybe demand to be a little higher than supply, and we're a ways from that still. But we're getting closer to equilibrium than we have been, and it's because of supply coming down and demand moving up.
As we're talking about where things are headed, one of the other big aspects I love about the report is future expectations. And can you talk to some of that? Because I know some of your respondents seem a little bit more optimistic about some of the coming months, and it's a little bit more focused on some of those upstreams, right?
It's nice that now you like the report and you're not making our metrics fight. I think that's real growth from you. So
They're always complimentary. I love them.
it's a Christmas miracle. All right. So our future predictions are good. So the overall LMI came in at 57.4 for the next 12 months, which would be a moderate rate of growth. And here's what I think is the most interesting thing that's being predicted. Inventory right at 50.0. Which is beautiful. That's exactly what I'm teaching my logistics classes. I'm like, that's exactly where you want your inventory to be, because that is perfect JIT. Things are coming in, they're going out. Now, will we really be at 50? Probably no. But the fact that that's what we're going for, I think shows a real sea change in the way people are thinking. And this is nature healing itself. This is a perfect return to normal for it to be 50.0. Now, that doesn't mean that all of our issues are solved, because we still don't have, even though warehousing capacity is expected to grow at a 56, there's still not enough. There's still not enough given, move towards e-commerce and where you need warehouses. And so we see predictions for warehousing prices at 65.3, which is pretty much par for the course. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal this week about Prologis saying, basically, yeah, things are still great. and clearly they are. We've never seen that number go down for warehousing price, and it doesn't look like it will anytime soon. The last piece that we should talk about is transportation. Transportation capacity is predicted to be at a 48 over the next 12 months, which would mean capacity down slightly. Now, and there won't be less trucks. There will probably be more trucks. But what that means is, we're talking about equilibrium. What we're predicting is this, so let's say this one's demand, this one's supply. Now we're moving to the place where demand might be above supply by a little bit, because things are picking back up. And I think that's also evidenced in transportation prices being predicted to be at a 65.8, which would be transportation prices haven't grown for us since April of 2022, which is sort of the beginning of our freight recession we're in. And so this is pretty optimistic that these numbers could be up by, 63.8, not 65.8, that these numbers could be up by essentially 20 points in the next year. And I think that's reflective of people expecting the Fed is going to cool it. That last meeting was pretty dovish. They're not saying, yeah, we're going to cut rates, but people are now expecting, hey, maybe in March, maybe things start to come down a little bit. And just anecdotally from the people I'm talking to, if we think about when transportation prices are going to invert with transportation capacity. And anytime those two lines invert for us, that's a freight inversion. And when we think the freight market is flipped, we're hearing people say, yeah, Q2 is what they're hoping. Now, will that happen? And I don't know for sure, but I think people think we're going to get to the end of the spring. Interest rates might be down slightly. And we're going to be building up for back to school. We're going to be at this point a year into JIT. Because we can say that we started JIT this summer, but we were starting JIT with still all this extra inventory. Once you've had a year of JIT, now that leanness can work all the way through the system. And so if we've had a year of JIT, inflation's down, back to school, that's when we think we might start to see normal freight patterns coming back in and a real utilization of the capacity that would lead to the freight market to flip back to a period of growth.
So you literally have given a lot of transportation service providers all they wanted for Christmas, which is a prediction of a market turn. Looks like Q3 of next year in 2024. Am I reading that right?
I think, I'm thinking in the summer. And as we talk to people, we hear different things. But if you kind of average it together, it's, it's not like we're going to come out here and be like, hey guys, June 2nd, look out, everything's
Right.
better. But at some point, it does seem like people are predicting we're going to get to this summer, and as long as we don't have another crazy black swan event, things will turn around. And what's funny? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, please.
I would say the last thing that's funny about that is our more optimistic folks right now are actually upstream. So, we've been really pushed by the retailer for the last year. They've been kind of what's been holding everything up. Upstream is actually predicting greater levels of growth over the next year. And I think that's encouraging on a lot of levels, because really you need both sides of the economy if you're going to have true growth and activity in the freight market.
Oh man. This is big stuff. So for those of you that aren't familiar with the LMI, check it out. Tell them where to look at it, Dr. Rogers.
the-lmi.com. The last year of reports are up there free for anybody to see. You can also send me an email if you want to get on the list.
Also, if you're a Sonar subscriber, you have access to it.
That's right.
But I think that's a huge call. 65 for expectation on transportation prices in 2024. That's massive.
And those future expectations usually turn out pretty well.